All right, we left off in lecture number 2 with war starting. Um, Germany had reneged on his promise to the world and to France and England when they invaded Poland in September of 1939, September 1st. And that left Britain and France very little option left, and they will declare war on Germany on September 3rd. And let's take a quick look at the major players in the war. The Allied forces had Great Britain from the very beginning of the war, France from the very beginning of the war, and then Russia will be attacked in 1941 and summer of 1941, and they will almost be knocked out of the war. And then, as we'll see here in a little bit, they'll hang on. Mother Nature will help them a great deal. The United States will enter at the very end of 1941. There's 43 other nations, many of which are major contributors, but I only included these 4 as they had the most vested. Canada was in, Australia, both former colonies of Great Britain. China was involved, to name a few, for the Allies. Then for the Axis, your main players, again, there were some other ones, but not near as many, was Germany was involved from the very beginning, along with Italy and Japan, again, the Tripac. Hungary, Romania, and Bulgaria will join later. Remember, Austria had fallen already to Germany in 36, 37. So war breaks out, and let's get into it. First of all, Germany, as I mentioned to you, their style of warfare was called Blitzkrieg, and Blitzkrieg means lightning war, and this combines the ability to move troops and to use airplanes tactically. Airplanes were by and large used for reconnaissance in World War I. And World War II, they're going to be used as major attack weapons. And you're going to have bombers and you're going to have fighters and tanks and artillery and a mechanized infantry, meaning you have the ability to transport your men instead of in just trucks. You'll be able to transport them in mechanized equipment that will be able to overrun machine guns. And they just run over all of Western Europe. In April of 1940, Denmark and Norway will fall to Germany. So again, war breaks out in September. Denmark and Norway will hang in there and gallantly. And then in May, the Netherlands and Belgium will fall. And I made a mistake. France did hang in a little bit longer than I initially remembered. France will hang in until June of 1940. France is a major military force, has gone to war with Germany several times in the past 100 years. And to see that size of an army and a country that proficient in war fall in less than 9 months, it was staggering for the world. Pretty much all of Europe now has fallen to Germany in June of 1940. He can turn all of his, remember, Hitler has got a non-aggression agreement with the Soviet Union. His Eastern Front is protected. The United States is not involved in the war. Now he can turn all of his energy and force towards England, and that's what he's going to do. And he's going to pound England throughout the entire summer and fall of 1940. The Battle of Britain is a staggering realization to the American Roosevelt's administration. He's now saying, oh my gosh, we have to get involved, but he can't. We had a much different laws that governed our country back then. You couldn't just use the president, didn't have the authority to use the military like he does today. And remember, the United States had been told for a long time, let's not get involved. Let's not get involved. Let's not get involved. We talked about in the last lecture the Neutrality Acts of 35, 36, and 37. And so we're going to sit this out for a while. And England is begging. England will replace Neville Chamberlain, Neville Chamberlain, and bring in a kind of a maverick, and we'll talk more about him by the name of Winston Churchill. Churchill had been a hawk for quite some time, and he was a war hero in World War I. He'd fallen out of favor for some decisions in Africa in the early 20s, but he's definitely the man for the task. So he'll be voted in as the chancellor in 1940, and or not chancellor, I'm sorry, the prime minister in 1940. Hitler will, on a nightly basis, pound the island of England, Great Britain, and he will come just within an eyelash of destroying the Royal Air Force. And just when it looks like there's almost virtually no chance, Hitler's going to make his first tactical mistake. And instead of just continuing the old adage, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, just keep doing what you're doing, and they're going to get knocked out of the war. There's no one coming their defense. England, in fact, there's a great many in England that are calling for peace and saying that this is not worth it, get out. Churchill refuses to, and Hitler will then change and turn back towards Russia or the Soviet Union, and we'll talk about that in just a second. And when that happens, and he doesn't knock out England out of the war, they will come up with the invention of radar. And radar is like the early system of detection or the early system of satellites, much more primitive. It doesn't have near as far a range, but the idea is still the same, that you can forecast when and where the enemy's planes are coming from. And when the Royal Air Force is able to use this, that will turn the tide in the air war against England. And eventually, the English Royal Air Force will defeat the German Luftwaffe, and but it'll take a good year and a half before you'll see that happen. In June of 1941, Hitler will go in and he'll keep pounding the idea of more living space, and we need more room for all the Germans. And he is going to go back against his old nemesis, Russia, or now underneath the Bolsheviks and the communists, they're called the USSR, the Soviet Union. And he will sucker punch Stalin by invading them on a surprise attack in June of 1941. And there are some lengthy discussion points as to how does Stalin ever not see Hitler attacking him, and being able to be that soft and getting hit that hard, because they're gonna absorb a heck of a punch. And then we'll talk about the United States and how we had our fleet, our Pacific Fleet, the 7th Fleet in Hawaii, unprotected and lined up in a row. And we'll get to that here in a little bit. But Hitler, he attacks the Soviet Union in June of 41 instead of staying the course You had started in the fall of 1940. You've got them on the ropes. They're almost done. And then you're going to turn in the following year, and because it's bogged down. Radar is starting to slowly turn the tide, but you're still probably got enough left to knock them out. You advance on the Soviet Union, and Hitler will move all the way from Germany quickly across Poland and into the Soviet Union and into Moscow in the late of 1941. And he's right on the cusp of knocking the Soviet Union out. And the Battle of Leningrad, which is, I believe, to the north of Moscow, will last for over 2 years. As you saw the one video about Stalin that we showed, it's just horrific. It's like something that it's like from a horror movie. And Mother Nature will save the Soviet Union, because it will turn to 20, 30, 40, 50 below zero, and tanks don't run, and engines don't run when it's that cold. They freeze and seize up. So Hitler will get bogged down, and he can't knock out the Soviets, much like he couldn't knock out England. This entire time in June all the way until December, Mr. Stalin will be screaming and hollering for assistance. Now, almost immediately, you'll have England and Churchill go to his defense, and immediately say that they're our ally. And Churchill never, ever trusted Stalin. They never got along. Churchill will make the famous quote in the House of Commons, if Satan was to, what was it? If Satan was to attack Germany, I would find a way to say something favorable about him. Meaning that it didn't matter who or what the entity was, England was going to support anybody that was going to go up against Germany. So when Stalin starts to fight, you now have a two-front war. Hitler has to divide his forces. He can't take out England. Same thing's true with the Soviet Union. He's fighting against the English. Now he's pretty much suffocated the English Channel, and he's surrounded the Soviets. So nobody can get supplies into those two countries, and the people there are dying from starvation and lack of supplies, but they're still hanging in there. This invasion of Russia will be Hitler's second fatal mistake, as it opens the door to the two-front war, and his supply lines are going to get long. And here comes number 3 mistake in just a second. America will enter the war. Japan's conquest of Asia. Remember, they invade China both in 31 and 37. They are looking for natural resources, rubber, oil, steel. They need that. And as they do this, the tensions between the United States and Japan will grow. The United States and Roosevelt will put on a embargo of oil and steel, and after Japan signs this tri-pact, and that's gonna really get Japan moving towards the idea of, hey, if you're going to get in a fight with a bully, hit him when he ain't ready. And Japan's going to try to hit us when we're not ready. Roosevelt will understand the tensions are moving south, and the waters are boiling between us and Japan. He's seeing what Japan's doing in China. He's very concerned. He moves the 7th Fleet into the West Coast, into Pearl Harbor. That's going to bring tensions to a boil. Japanese realize it's either now or never, and they put together a task force, and they miraculously move across the Pacific Ocean, which is no small feat. I mean, it's a large body of water, but it's a large task force too, and we're out searching for them. And on December 7th of 1941, a Sunday morning, Japan will attack Pearl Harbor, and we'll talk about that more when we get to the Pacific Theater. They really damaged the United States fleet. Fortunately, we had 2 of our carriers. We have 4 carriers out, and 2 of them were out in the high seas, and they were not hit. But they hit 2 of our carriers and a number of our battleships and destroyers and cruisers. And the United States will now declare war on Japan on December 8th. Now, Germany and Italy will declare war on the US shortly after. And the thinking from Hitler was, I can get America to divide its forces. America's going to get in this war with us sooner or later. They've made it clear we have been doing numerous violations, again, like we were in World War I, to the Neutrality Acts. We're giving all kinds of supplies. We're stepping around all of the Neutrality Acts, and we'll eventually repeal those and just be able to do those federal laws. But Roosevelt has been doing that for years, trying to aid England. But when Hitler attacks finally, or when Japan attacks us, then Hitler will say, I got to do it. And that will bring the United States into war. We're going to stop there now, and we'll go in through the rest of the operations in that. But you now have all the combatants in, with the exception of France. France has been knocked out of the war. In their replacement, the United States and the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union is an antiquated fighting force. It's not nearly as advanced technology-wise as the other countries are, but they have a large number of people and they are determined. So then you have the United States that can have an economy that can build stuff at just an amazing rate, and we're going to be better trained than we were in World War I. But we're going up against a much better fighting force. So we're going to go for about a year here, year and a half, where we're going to take it pretty good on the chin. And so we'll talk about that more later.